Thank you so much for attending my presentation about Pokemon design that doesn't work, and first let's talk about Analytic. This ability is really interesting and looks threatening. When the holder moves last in a turn, their attacks get a 1.3 times boost in power. This isn't anything insane, but could in theory be dangerous. So what kinds of Pokemon would you want to have Analytic? The two things you'd really like are a low speed stat and lots of bulk. Low speed makes a lot of sense, so you can actually use Analytic, but why do you need bulk? Well, since you're trying to move last each turn, you need to be actually living attacks. To be clear, Analytic also works on switches, allowing threatening fast offensive Pokemon to still make use of it. However, missing out on the other benefit does suck. Unfortunately, many Pokemon that have Analytic lack one or both of these traits, not fully taking advantage. Beheeyem is a slow psychic type with a huge special attack stat of 125, dishing out a lot of damage. Plus, it is Analytic. However, even with investment, it's not really sticking around for that long. Thankfully, it's able to carve out niches in weaker low tiers where it's actually on the field for extended periods of time. Most Analytic users have an issue. Starmie is too fast, Porygon Z isn't that bulky and it's pretty quick, Watchog just sucks. The closest thing we have to a powerful Analytic Pokemon is actually Magnezone. Still not a terrible ability, as capitalizing on switches can really help, but it is a bit unfortunate. This next one is pretty simple. Expanding Force is a super powerful move. When used in Psychic terrain, it not only gets the terrain power boost, but gets even stronger on top of that while becoming a spread move. This has been a huge threat in VGC recently, with Pokemon like Delphox, Exeggutor, and Hatterene blowing stuff up. However, there is a small catch. To get those benefits while in terrain, you need to be grounded. This might seem like a pretty easy requirement, and normally it is, but for a few Pokemon it's basically impossible. Azelf has huge attacking stats and could be a massive threat with a Scarf or Specs, but its only ability is Levitate, making it airborne and thus unable to be a strong expanding force sweeper. There are ways to get it on the ground yourself, like Gravity, but at that point it isn't really worth it. However, I'm totally fine with this. A 115 base speed, 125 special attack monster clicking Expanding Force is a bit terrifying. Despite not being too flashy, Frisk is a nice ability. It reveals what item the opponent is carrying when you switch onto the field. This is especially good against Pokemon that can run a ton of different sets. A great example is Incineroar, who's extremely versatile. Safety Goggles keeps it safe from Spore. Figgy Berry gives recovery. Assault Vest gives it a ton of special bulk in exchange for not having either Parting Shot or Will-O-Wisp. All of these builds threaten different things to different members of your team, and getting a better idea of what they're running is super nice. While not perfect, and there's many abilities with higher value, this is a cool trick and can be helpful for Pokemon like Noivern, but in Gen 9 that all went down the drain, at least in VGC. Pokemon introduced open team sheets giving the opponent access to all of your items and moves. This makes Frisk almost worthless, only alerting you of the opponent's speed order and maybe a Zoroark. This is pretty unfortunate, making Pokemon like Typhlosion essentially not have a hidden ability. Not super impactful, but making an entire part of a Pokemon worthless kinda sucks. Finally, we'll talk about Whiscash. I made a video a while ago talking about how good water ground types are and brought up every single one but Whiscash. This is because, to be frank, it's not that good. But I do feel a little bad about that still, so I may as well explain why. Whiscash has a few really good traits. That stab combo is remarkably strong, hitting most things for at least neutral damage. This looks even better when you see its access to Dragon Dance, boosting both attack and speed in one turn. This is really powerful and unique, throwing off powerful earthquakes and waterfalls, well, at least in theory. Whiscash's abilities, while not horrible, don't help it function in this role. Oblivious stops Taunt, which isn't too impactful. Hydration heals status while in the rain, another fine effect that isn't ever doing much with the catfish. Anticipation tells it when an opponent has a super effective move, which once again isn't bad, but why would you use it on a Pokemon with one weakness to Grass and I guess also Freeze Dry? It's unfortunate. Plus, of course, it has terrible stats. It's not fast or powerful, forcing it to spend a bunch of time setting up, where it's very vulnerable to even neutral hits because it's not that damn bulky. It had a lot of potential, but it didn't really pan out. In conclusion, Pokemon design can be a bit contradictory. Whether it's stats, abilities, or even the format itself, there's many ways to make Pokemon worse, these examples being some of my least favorite. Thank you so much for watching.